Hello, everybody. Very good to see you. I'm not Deborah Doughton, as we appear to have a bit of a problem with her internet connection, but I'll do as good a job in filling in as I can. And I'd really like to welcome you all to the DBA Design Effectiveness Awards webinar, Design Effectiveness Uncovered. It's your chance to speak directly to some winners of this year's DBA Effectiveness Awards and some previous winners as well. So I'm really delighted to welcome 4 people who satisfy that criteria. We have Jason Milne, the Creative Director at Contagious. We have Di Sanders, Consumer Sector Manager at DCA Design. And Katarzyna Sliwa, I hope I pronounced that right, CEO at Ergo Design, and Philip Coe, Director of Strategy at Without. Now I'm hoping we've got everybody on. Sometimes it takes a couple of minutes before we get our full bunch of people. But whilst we're waiting to make sure everybody's here, just settle down, get yourselves comfortable. We're going to spend the next hour looking at the strategic use of design, how that has transformed the businesses of the DBA Effectiveness winners. We're going to look at the power of the long-standing client relationship, how to sustain that over time, and many different people perhaps who come into that relationship and partnership, how the input of design expertise enables design-driven growth, the key factor of our Design Effectiveness Awards, and the experiential impact of design on every touch point of a project. Just to remind you, I'm Clive Grenier. I'm the chair of the DBA Design Effectiveness Awards. It's been my huge privilege for the last 3 years to sit in on the judging panels, go through the whole process. And this is our chance really to share with you some of the insights and some of the experience from people who've gone through this process very successfully. You'll see that in the chat, you're being asked to put any questions you want. And as we get through the choreographed part of today, there'll be time for you to ask some questions at the end. So welcome everybody, and welcome to Jason, Di, Katarzyna, and Philip. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be here. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for the invite.
Excellent. Excellent. A great pleasure to have you here. So I'm going to ask each of you individually a few questions, and along the way, we're going to look at a few videos as well, just to give a bit of background. You've got some case studies, and they've just been popped into the chat. I'm sure you've all read them already, but if you, just in case you haven't, then you can click on them now and get the background information, and it really helps you understand why and how these particular projects were so successful in being measured for their effectiveness. So I'm going to start off with Jason, if I may. Hello, Jason. How are you doing?
Not bad at all. Good to see you again.
Good. Yes, absolutely. So you worked with Ian McLeod Distillers for Glengoyne, and that has spanned over 10 years. And in that time, your case study highlights 4 major areas where they use design to incrementally build their business, and with the end result of some very impressive results. Tell us a little bit more about how you worked with Glengoyne in this way over such a long period, and how you built the case for effectiveness in a project like this.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's coming on for 11 years now since we've been working with Glengoyne and Ian McLeod Distillers, and I know that because it's roughly the age of my daughter. So it wasn't at all stressful to start working with them as my daughter was born. But in terms of design effectiveness and strategy, the first project we did for them was their retail project, and probably those kind of terms couldn't have been further from the truth, further from my mind. Basically, I turned up with a guy with some guys with some hammers, and we built them a shop. But during that process, we discovered quite a lot about one another. You know, in terms of these are the figures that won't have gone into our case study. That first retail area, the budget, I think the initial budget, we ended up 16 times over the budget. It took 4 times as long to build. It was an incredible experience, I thought. And I'd come from a background of commercial retail design in London, working for Tesco, Marks and Spencer, etc. And I just thought, well, that's it. We'll never get any work with these guys ever again. But however, they saw the results, And I saw their process as being a much more personal thing for them rather than my kind of corporate background. And the reason it had taken so long is that incrementally throughout it, they'd said, well, I know what, we can fix the roof. We can use this opportunity to do all these things. And they kept stopping the project. And I think at that point, we realized we had a kind of shared sense of rigor for really just doing the very best thing for our client, their customers, our guests who are going to come along. And our relationship initially started off really, what I was thought was the wrong foot was actually the right foot. So, you know, and then, so that kind of has built up over kind of the last 11 years. And in that time, we've done seven major projects at that site. They're all quite small projects, but and each one has kind of been built on the shoulders of the last one before. And what I've realized through the process of entering this competition and getting gold last year for this was that the actual effectiveness was built in kind of by stealth, just through that kind of initial kind of meeting of minds. We wanted to do the right thing on so many levels. For every project, we kind of had to put a case study together to apply to the board about why it was going to be useful for them, why it was going to be effective, what it was going to bring, what was going to fix, what was going to make better, all those things. And although they weren't your criteria was nestled somewhere within there. So when it came to last year, we looked back on there and we kind of realized, yeah, we can answer kind of quality of experience. We did increase visitor numbers, and by in turn, spend per head, profitability all went up across that time. So I would never claim that it was a grand plan over 10 years, but as we've developed together as client and agency, it's really worked well.
That's amazing. So sort of baked in to what you were doing, and then
all with the best intentions right at the start. Yeah.
Excellent stuff. Philip, can I come to you? Hello, Philip. Lovely to
Hi,
see you here. Thanks for joining us. And
That's
for
right.
those of you who aren't aware, Philip is without the agency and worked for Sodexo on our Grand Prix winner this year, a fabulous project, Modern Recipe. So part of your work with Sodexo that I remember particularly impressed the judges was how you developed a completely new proposition, and it shaped the design of the whole brand experience. From my background in service design, this was a fantastic project.
Mhm.
The name, the identity, the packaging, you went through the interior design, the service style, signage, you know, every touch point, marketing, even down to the menu. A new, healthier menu was an output from that brand. So tell us a bit more about how design touched all those elements of this new brand and how you made that case for effectiveness with a project of this scale.
Sure. I mean, for the members of your audience who are kind of unfamiliar with Sodexo, they are, you know, one of the biggest employers in the world. They're one of these sort of hidden companies who have actually got their fingers in lots of pies. They run the cleaning for the NHS. They run building maintenance. They run securities in sort of huge offices. And part of their offer is this food offer. They also run office canteens for the more kind of progressive companies in around the world. And our project was really to rebrand the food offer for them. And we specialize in hospitality, and branding in hospitality has always been more than about individual components. You know, I think the fact is that a logo on its own, however beautifully it's crafted in this particular sector, doesn't have that much of an impact on consumers. They care about the entire experience, and that's how we approach our branding. From the moment you walk past a restaurant or a hotel on the high street, what do they see? How do they feel when they walk into a space? What does the packaging look like? What sort of like tactile textures are there to the cups that they're holding? And that is what adds up to a sort of a full brand experience. And because of that, that's how the scope of our project was sort of so wide-ranging, because every single aspect of this builds up to a fully successful brand in the mind of the consumer. I think the other important thing to note as well, because it's a food offer, the proposition, the values that we put behind it are really, really important as well. And so being able to understand that and being able to drive that, I think, is something that really kind of connects with customers. In terms of how we measured the success of this and how we were able to sort of get the statistics that we needed for the award entry, I think we were lucky in working with such a huge operation, in that everything goes through a process and everything is tested. So we ran a pilot scheme for them in one particular office space. It was actually Diageo out in West London, where we had sort of full control over all the variables, if you like, in terms of how consumers experience the brand. And we also knew that nothing else was changing. We could compare it to how other similar offices in London were doing. And obviously this was all sort of pre-pandemic. So we had a lot of kind of controls in place where we could say, this is the one thing that's changing, or these are the things that are changing. And all of these things were within our remit. You know, we did interiors, we did the food offer, and so on. And being able to see the uplift in those changes was then, you know, we were able to point directly to the changes we made, and here are the results that came from it.
Fantastic. And that's such an important part of the competition, of course, that we really can isolate design and show that has had the impact. And that was brilliant that you were able to do that. That really helped you, I think, win the big prize. Thank you for that, and congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Let's move to another of this year's prize winners. Katarzyna, hi. Hello, how are you? Oh, you're on mute. I've never done that before in my life.
I'm back. Hello, everyone.
I want to hear you as well as you. Great, good. Well, congratulations to you for the work with that Ergo Design did for Globe Traveller. This project was a tool for you to take design to a strategic level within this business, Globe Traveller. Can you tell us a little bit more about how this worked in reality? You know, what did you do, and how did you work together to provide such amazing sales figures and market success?
Of course, with pleasure. Actually, it's a very great award for us. It's quite unique in the area of design. So it's very, very outstanding, very important for us and for our clients. And actually, at the beginning of our cooperation with Globe Traveller, the challenge wasn't that high. It wasn't a strategic level of implementation of design. We were invited to build, actually restyle a new model. And as a design studio, we've worked with many industries in many areas, but we had never anything to do with the caravanning industry. So we had to catch up really quickly. But our client turned out to be the best expert in the industry. And that's one thing. And the second thing, they really knew what they want. And the business mind behind all these projects is our client, their management team, their marketing team, that really told us what they expect. And we had to prove ourselves as a reliable partner from bottom up, actually. We took the challenge of restyling the new model, which is a very complex project. It's not an object that you can take in hands. It's more than human scale. Actually, it's many small projects in one. We counted over 50 little areas of improvement in this model. So that's a lot. And we had only a couple of months to design and implement, and together with Globe Traveller's team, build this model for the launch on Düsseldorf Caravanning Show, which is the most important show in the industry. So we couldn't fail because they couldn't turn up without this new novelty, actually new model. And so it happened that our cooperation worked really well. It's worth mentioning that Globe Traveller had their own design competence inside their team. But it was the first time they worked with outside design studio, and we did it as a design lab.
Very good. Well, let's have a look at what you did. We have a short film here about your work with Ergo Design. So let's have a look at that now. Sorry, with Globe Traveller.
Every day, every subsequent construction bring us closer to new solutions and lead us down a new path. Our work and experience determines the need for change. This has led us to take a new path in designing a new line of recreational vehicles. Therefore, in our efforts, we join forces with Ergo Design, creating the Design Lab. Through the Design Lab, we can first experience, then experiment, and finally create new solutions. Hand in hand with the users. This is how we shape the future. We present you the result of our cooperation. we're embarking on a new course together.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations again, by the way. It's a great story, and lovely that the company should make such a nice promotion of your collaboration. That's always lovely to see. So thanks, Katarzyna. We'll be coming back to you shortly. Now let's move to Di. Welcome, Di, from DCA Design.
Hey, how are you doing, Clive?
How are you? Great to see you, and congratulations from a couple of years ago for your work with the Sensodyne. Of course, you managed to win the Grand Prix that year for your amazing toothbrush. So your brief to win that Grand Prix in 2019 was to design a better toothbrush that would be affordable for a very specific market, for the Indian market. How did you take a holistic design approach? And of course, you didn't only achieve that, but you made several other efficiencies too in the design.
So I guess yeah, as a 3D design agency, we have I'd like to say, a unique combination of skills where we balance in strong technical capabilities with sensitivity towards consumer needs, and also like an awareness for kind of brand requirements. So we're able to kind of look through these three primary lenses consistently. I think in the case of the Sensodyne toothbrush, we're able to look at, our technical team are able to look at the current production processes and identify areas that might have the greatest impact and give the greatest cost savings. Because we know that cost savings and in terms of, the cost that is then translated down into the cost to the consumer was what is needed to kind of open up this market significantly in India. So by looking at it predominantly from a technical perspective, we were able to kind of see where we could, say, remove material and weight. So we reduced the amount of weight by 45%. And by doing that, there's more efficient production process, and it takes a lot less time to cool in the tool. So we're reducing the cycle time to actually manufacture each individual part by about 37%, I think it was. So both of those have obviously sort of like an impact, a beneficial impact on cost, and that can be transferred to the consumer. But in addition to that, then there's obviously the benefits from a sustainability perspective. That was never the objective for in the brief, in fairness. But actually, when we look at it, that's quite, it's an interesting area, and actually something that we would think, well, what we're trying to do is maintain sort of like an ideal brand experience, create the premium brand such as Sensodyne, and be able to deliver that into a market where we are kind of reducing costs and able to kind of offer that. But actually, you should be able to take those principles to, products that we use, and sort of like, if we can make those savings there, then there's a sort of like obvious sort of like, it can work both ways. It's not just about reducing cost.
Yeah.
But we're able to maintain that kind of premium experience from a consumer perspective, and and maintain brand identity and appeal by applying sort of like some technical rigor and sort of and some intelligent approach to design as to how we can make a difference.
Absolutely. To me, it was fascinating. Your project was attacking behavior change, very specific engineering briefs, and then, as you say, sustainability. And I think there's a strong message in this year's winners as well, that sustainability is becoming a kind of, it's part of the equation, as well as it's an important part of effectiveness. So we've been enjoying seeing more and more entries inspired by yours. So thank you. Let's go back to you, Philip. When you talked just now about the work with Sodexo, about the enormous number of decisions that you made along the way that shaped that project, how did you actually approach working with the client? Did they understand that it was all design? Did they appreciate that your skills would be able to create that total experience that you described just now?
Yeah, I think the really important thing to note here, and I think everyone here and everyone in the audience will notice, is that the success of projects is dependent as much on the client as it is on us. And that's a great thing about the DBA award, is that it is a client award as much as it is an agency award. And I have to say that our success on the project with Sodexo was very much down to the clients themselves. We were able to work with a team that had the the seniority to be able to make brave decisions. Not just that, but they were also well aware enough of what they needed on the project to bring an agency like ours in at a really early stage. So I think in a lot of cases, you know, agencies get briefed on projects where a lot of sort of key decisions have already been made, and you're there kind of scratching your head thinking, why are we designing for this? Whereas we were able to go in there and say, look, guys, you think you're a B2B product, and actually you're not, you're a B2C product. And that really unlocked the project for them. So, you know, having brave clients like that and clients who are forward thinking enough like that is really, really important. In terms of us and how we behaved, I think, you know, so it's obviously really important for us to be really good listeners, and all agencies owners will know this. But the key is to balance that with, you know, sort of this bravery on our side to say, okay, we've heard enough, and we're just going to get mired down in all of the pitfalls that you've got yourselves into, and to be able to say, from what we've heard, this is the solution, and let's go with it. So it's this balance of listening, but also saying, okay, we've heard enough, we're going to make a decision now.
Sometimes got to cut through, haven't you?
Yeah.
Move beyond the barriers that they currently have. That's really interesting piece of insight. Thank you. Okay, well, we're going to go to Jason at Contagious in a moment. But first of all, let's have a little video. Linden Lime Gin was a strategic move for the Port of Leith distillery, so they could raise money for their whiskey distillery business. Let's take a look at the video from Contagious to understand more about what they did.
To signal their entry to the spirit sector and build important brand credibility in advance of their whiskey, Port of Leith Distillery asked Contagious to brand and package their new gin. It's not unusual for whiskey distilleries to produce gin to help raise revenue and funding, but it is unusual to invest everything they have in design. The brief called for an off-the-shelf bottle and a brand for a Scottish gin, but the more we talked, the more we could see how strongly this client feels about sustainability. We persuaded them to work with this. Putting their trust in design, they agreed to invest in a bespoke bottle form. This allowed us to partner with the manufacturer to explore how to create the now trademarked aqua blue glass by using higher levels of recycled materials in the composition, instead of spraying or adding colour to the bottle. In 2019, new Scottish gins were launching like wildfire. We steered Linden Lime clear of botanicals and purple landscapes to find a different route to stand out. The urban location and Leith's maritime history combined to create an authentic hyperlocal brand, and as soon as Linden Lime hit the first local outlets, social media did the rest. It flew, and the entire Q1 stock of 2,000 bottles sold out in just 2 weeks. 3-year sales targets were all surpassed in 14 months, and Linden Lime now supports the running costs of the young company and contributes to the construction of the distillery. For Contagious, new relationships have been formed with clients who actively sought us out as the agency behind the striking design.
Wow, terrific, terrific story there. Congratulations, Jason, again. You talk in that little video about trust and investing all their money in design. Can you tell us a bit more about how you built that trust?
Yeah, I mean, that, again, it had a kind of funny little start. It was a little bit like a bit of a love story at the start, or maybe like a rom-com. And you know the kind of, when you're in that situation, money doesn't mean anything. So I think we were coming from two different places, but we had to find a common ground. The client's background was in wine. He'd come to us and we were going to work together. He had a Bordeaux bottle, very beautiful kind of shape. And his reason for going with that bottle was that it was a beautiful shape. It was plentiful, he could get hold of it. It seemed a bit unusual in the gin market, and it would be nice and cheap. But we had already been thinking about this, and we could see that the benefits of this bottle, one of which was it's got very narrow kind of shoulders. It leaves a bit of negative space around it, and at the time there's a kind of a tendency for gin bottles to have high shoulders, so it creates a bit of negative space in the backboard, kind of like the Absolute bottle aimed to disappear when it first came on the market about 30 years ago. So we could see that. We'd also been looking at the old glassworks in Leith. Their kind of kiln chimney looked like a similar type of shape. So we'd come from completely different points of view, but we knew there was something there. We also knew that in a market where there was like 600 or 700 gins on the market, whereas previously, 20 years previously, there'd been 15, 20, that we really need to do something to make us stand out. So we loved the starting point of the Bordeaux bottle, but we didn't like this cheapness of the Bordeaux bottle. We liked the idea that they should own their own silhouette and own their own identity right from the start. Otherwise, how on earth were they going to make a real proper splash and become their own brand with this kind of release? So we kind of came together at that point. This kind of meeting of minds kind of eventually kind of was when it kind of started. And then that kind of flowered the incredible, because it was lind and lime and the greenness and that brilliant kind of conclusion we came to. There's a lot of good things that happened with the green glass not requiring any color at all. And actually the more recycled glass we used in there, the greener it became. And there were so many sort of wonderful things that happened with that project.
That is indeed a rom-com. Thank you. That was excellent. I love the sort of feeling of co-creation of the bottle and making those big decisions as you went along. That's a really lovely story. Di, DCA. Hello again. You've been working with Reckitt for 15 years. That's pretty impressive. You've been their 3D strategic design partner. You've been at DCA that long. Have you built the relation? How have you built that relationship over time? And how would you describe the benefits for working for somebody and fostering that relationship over such a long time?
Yeah, well, I've actually been at DCA for 20 years, and 15 of those have been working with Reckitt.
Amazing.
And yeah, I think that, you know, for me on a personal level, it is one of the proudest things that I've done is actually to kind of foster this relationship over that period of time. In terms of, you know, how we've maintained that, I think it's, you know, consistently sort of like producing sort of, I think, you know, we believe high quality work that actually addresses their brief really effectively. It's having, I think, a very open and honest relationship with them, where we're kind of like quite candid in terms of, you know, how hard we push them, because we do push them quite hard. We push back quite hard often because, you know, if we were going in new, that would be a lot more difficult to do. So we're in a very fortunate position to be able to have a long-standing relationship, which allows us to be able to kind of, you know, demonstrate the sort of like, you know, the experience that we're bringing and sort of like the benefits it can bring to them. So some of the areas where, you know, we spend their budgets very effectively. I think that's something that's very appreciated. Because we've had such a long-term relationship with them, we can shortcut quite a few bits and pieces. We're essentially the advocates for a lot of their consumers because we've done so much consumer work with them. We kind of know, so we don't have to start from scratch every time. So we're a lot more efficient in, you know, there's a lot of efficiencies that I'll come on to sort of like maybe a little bit later on. Sure. And I suppose more interestingly, is sort of like, you know, people like myself who's a bit more long in the tooth with this particular client, we've got a very healthy balance of bringing in new talent. You know, we invest a lot in sort of like getting new designers into the business, and actually combining the, you know, my experience with their freshness of thinking just means that we're constantly kind of delivering kind of like high quality sort of like fresh ideas that are kind of like backed up by experience and that. So, but in terms of then the benefits, I suppose benefits kind of work both ways, and I think that's an important thing to kind of be aware of with fostering sort of like longer-term relationships like this. It needs to be mutually beneficial. I mean, from Reckitt's perspective, you know, we've got 300 plus projects under our belt with them over those, you know, 15 years. So we've got a huge back catalogue of experience and projects that we kind of draw on. We also, as you know, partners for being that long, we kind of we update many of their kind of internal staff. So we provide a level of continuity and awareness of what they've done historically on many of their kind of projects. So we can kind of look back at some of, you know, the successes and failures and sort of like areas to learn and apply those to kind of new projects. And then in addition to that, because Reckitt is a multi-brand owner, we can look at their each of their initiatives cross brands. So we can say we can identify areas where internally they might be looking at things in relative silos from one brand to the other. We have the advantage of being able to look at what is going on from brand to brand and apply levels of consideration across those. And we quite often go to them and kind of just alert them to the fact that other teams are working on areas that might be of benefit elsewhere.
It's sort of a critical friend as well as a design.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think that's very interesting. I think some people use design consultants and designers as, like, you know, football managers, you know, but you need that time to learn, don't you? You need that time to collectively go on that journey. That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Di. Katarzyna, so your work with Global Traveller, but this is a caravanning company, you know, and your background is from many different industries: medical, consumer, industrial machinery. So this is a very new industry for you. And how did you work with a client to sort of understand and make sure you were getting the right fit for that market?
Actually, I must support everyone's opinion about mutual trust, mutual benefits in the cooperation. And when you meet a new client, especially from an industry that you can't like boast yourself with already like ready-made projects for your prior clients, that's a bit difficult. That takes time. And this is why we actually did this project as a team. Actually, if I say that we are the authors as Ergo Design of this project, that's true. But if I say that its authorship is to the Global Traveller, that's also true, because that's our mutual project. And working in the design lab actually got us very close together. We know their company very well. We identify with their business goals, and we know them from their management, from their CEO. We understand deeply how they are going to develop next year, in 2 years, for the 5 years, what's their strategy. So we can like have very broad context. And as I said, actually we didn't do only the design. We've been in the implementation phase. We've been frequently in their production plants. So we actually work with them hand in hand from the initial sketches until the model was actually built and even launched in the Düsseldorf. So we know each other, and there is very good chemistry, and this is how this trust was actually built. And yes, what I also wanted to mention is actually our process, because it's quite specific to us, to our design studio. We implemented Lean methodology in our design process, which very well matches to the production and the management methodologies of our clients who are manufacturers. And for us, if it's a caravanning industry, if it's yachting industry that we've worked for, doesn't make much difference.
Right. Still all the same approach and philosophy. That's fantastic. I'm going to come to Philip very shortly, but before we do that, the judges were very impressed with the Grand Prix win that Without created for Sodexo, with design touching every element, as I've already mentioned, right down to the menus. So let's look at the video. Let's take a little look at this project in more detail. Thank you.
As a studio, we emphasise clients' difference. So when Sodexo asked us to rebrand their food offer, we saw an opportunity to turn corporate catering on its head. The original brief to create a B2B brand didn't address why staff canteens were failing. There were better options outside the office. We needed a brand that spoke not to Sodexo's corporate clients, but to the end customers instead. First, we ditched formal meal times and themed food, the dreaded Mexican Tuesdays, in favour of an all-day offer. Secondly, we created generous, experiential branding. Less logos and slogans, more materials and thoughtful details. This principle helped unlock original behaviour. From marketing that emphasised tasty, creative food and drink, to the design of relaxed, multi-purpose environments, and intelligent sales tools that drew links between food and environment and well-being and productivity. Modern Recipe is a simple brand based on food people want to eat in spaces they want to be. It works because hospitality, in whatever form, is about people.
Thanks very much. A great little video there. I love that. Less slogans, more detail. Enjoyed that one a lot. Your work with Sodexo was a bold move, as a huge brand that were very B2B focused. And again, that's one of the things you've all mentioned, that they're really B2C, but moving from that old canteen feel to modern recipe, again, that trust from the outset, how did they understand that that's what you were going to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting one, actually. I think, you know, so we, as an agency, we specialize in consumer brands, and I think that put us on the front foot from the very start, in that they could see that we had brought success to brands on the high street that they recognize. And certainly at the time, you know, the London high street was sort of one of the noisiest and most sort of competitive in the world. So like the learnings that we had from that, I think, sort of put us in a really good stead and gave us a lot of credibility when presenting to them. I think throughout the process, what we were very keen to do was just to connect every decision we make with a relevant outcome for them. So at no point was it about design for design's sake. And it was really about showing them that design, we were on their side, and the design that we worked on was really about delivering effectiveness for them. And I think that the final point is just one about taking people on a journey. I think as professionals, you know, much like lawyers or accountants or bankers, there's a tendency for us as designers to kind of wrap up what we do in sort of quite opaque language, because we're trying to kind of protect the magic of design. And what we sometimes sort of fail to understand is that it's sort of even the most basic steps are things that our clients don't understand. So we were very, very aware of just sort of like cutting through any jargon in terms of how we describe the work, and being really open with them in terms of what we were doing, and being very sort of straightforward with it. I think that like the final thing to say about building trust is that, again, it comes down to the client. You know, when you talk about an organization like Sodexo, you think that they're all going to be kind of suits and quite buttoned up, and actually the team we worked with were just such a laugh, and it was just really great fun, I think, for everyone to work on, and it sort of shows in the work as well.
That's a nice metric.
Yeah,
that everyone's happy. That's
nice. Not so measurable though.
No, indeed. I'm going to jump back to Di now, because you were talking about the longevity of your relationship. And one of the thoughts that immediately crossed my mind is obviously lots of different people going through, a lot of staff turnover. How do you manage to ensure you're not starting from scratch every time? You know, specifically, what do you have to do to make sure you don't go backwards and start again?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I guess we're referring to turnover of staff, not at DCA, but this is at the client.
More at Reckitt, yes, more at Reckitt, absolutely.
Yeah. I think, you know, on the client side, that it's always been a difficult one, because particularly if we're working, say, with marketing team, there tends to be a higher turnover of staff within that function, and quite often we are having to start, work with, very ambitious individuals who want to change the world, and sort of like, so maintaining something like sort of brand assets or things that might be a little bit more constraining to some, but actually for us are really important, because it offers a level of continuity both from a consumer point of view, and to make sure that your brand has a consistency. So that is where we kind of find a lot of the difficulties is working with new, but it doesn't take them long to to understand that that design can really help them, rather than seeing us as being just a service, and just actually quite quickly they get to appreciate us as a partner, and sort of like to understand that is actually we're really there to to offer a mutual benefit. But it does take some time with new people coming in and going, that we've got to make sure that we kind of build in time to be able to take people on that kind of unfamiliar journey, particularly in 3D. A lot of marketing people might only have an understanding on how you manage graphic projects, or sort of like artwork projects. 3D design is a particularly different sort of like beast that requires different levels of sensitivity and awareness, and hand holding in many cases, in much of the cases, to take it through to production. So in terms of working with individuals, you tend to have different functions will retain their staff. So R&D functions tend to hold on to their staff for longer. Category marketing teams tend to have a higher turnover. And it's just making sure, and we kind of bridge that gap between the two of those, so we have a consistency of technical awareness and brand awareness to be able to kind of make the most of that.
And from your previous question, your answer rather, it's sort of you clearly hold the heritage of everything that's going on there. So that's lovely. So that's DCA Design and Reckitt this year they won a silver with the Design Effectiveness Awards for the Airwick Essential Mist. Let's hear a little bit more about this project in the video.
For the last 15 years, we have fostered what you could call a symbiotic relationship with Reckitt as their 3D strategic design partner. An Essential Mist really illustrates the positive results you get from such a long-term partnership. The AK category is incredibly crowded and confusing for consumers, so we immersed ourselves for 2 weeks in US homes to better understand the barriers and opportunities in context. We then involved them in the design co-creation process. The results are Essential Mist, a refillable fragrance device that is mess-free and uses natural essential oils. Its portability, simple design, discreet size and silent operation means it can sit anywhere in the home, with more people happy to place it in the previously avoided living room and bedroom. And the use of premium materials was a key contributing factor to it commanding a higher price point. We ensured that the design was not only visually flexible, but was future-proof to accommodate additional functionalities such as control via an app. Having greater control of the device not only attracts a younger audience, it is breaking down the category gender gap with far more men buying into the format. The natural fragrance experience combined with elegant design has not only defined a new category, it has helped Airwick to engage with the next generation of consumers and laid the foundation for an exciting range of future products.
Fantastic. Thank you. What a great story. Turned it into a real piece of service design. I commend you. Great. Fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about the actual nuts and bolts of the DBA Design Effectiveness Awards. And Katarzyna, I'm going to say hello to you again. You were new to entering this awards last year. How did you find the process and the support you got from the DBA? Tell us about that.
Actually, we came across this competition quite by accident, but it immediately attracted us because I already said it's quite unique. And when I read through the guidance, and there are your KPIs suggestions for actually projects, that was very well prepared. Actually, for me, it's a blueprint of how to think about key performance indicators in actually any project. There is the governance and strategy, there is marketing and communication with market feed, finance, everything's there. Everything that should be considered at the starting point of a project. So we actually wanted to try and see what are our chances to and how will be actually what the feedback will be from your side when the competition is already ongoing for a couple of years, and we were surprised to be one of the winners. So thank you very much. And actually that wasn't that difficult, mainly because we already mentioned that we identify with our clients' business goals at the very start. And actually we already employed KPIs in our project setups. So we've been working with them for some time now. And, just assessing the project, that wasn't that hard, but probably getting some figures, summary of the performance of the project. Because once you launch it, you can access the cooperation, the design process, matching some internal goals, but you can access the market success at sometimes after. So we needed to gather some information and reflect on them, actually, if this is a success and how big it is.
Excellent.
And actually convince our client that it's an award worth having, or worth being awarded, because it's not that very well known. And our client had some other goals and promotional strategy, but with time actually we see that there is a really good reason to enter to this competition, because it gives structure of thinking about what's the influence of design on business. Because probably everyone can agree that there is a huge influence, and design can fuel not only sales figures, that's something desired by business, and like direct results, but increasing goodwill of the company, increasing brand value, a growing capacity to grow as a business. This is something that design also can do in the hands of good designers, in the hands of understanding clients. And I must say that we are very happy to feel very important for our clients. And probably that's why they are so open to our suggestions. And that's why they want to experiment, because we don't do like design and then just try to implement it. It's like very fast-paced, lean process of building, measuring, and learning. And actually, they accepted it as it, that was the only way. I think
really
that's
had an impact.
the best way. Yes,
Yeah.
that's
That's
very,
really had an
very
impact on
interesting.
how you work with them, perhaps. Amazing.
Yes, it's not opinion against opinion or opinion or suggestion and acceptance. It's a way of mutual experimentation and checking if it works, if it's viable economically, if it's technically possible. And we do it with each step, with every little detail. And, we couldn't do that ourselves. They couldn't do that themselves. It just requires orchestrated team, and this is something that I'm really proud of in this project. And I hope that our cooperation with this client will continue for this mentioned 15 years or on, because that's a very good client, very well understanding what design can bring.
That's inspirational, and probably one of the best adverts for the Design Effectiveness Awards we've ever had. So thank you very much. Absolutely sensational. This has such an impact on how you work and actually help you have a long-term relationship and build that trust. That's a great message. Now, one of the issues people often have with applying for a DBA award is confidentiality. So Di, I'm going to come back to you. And Reckitt must have a lot of market-sensitive confidential data. How do you approach including this in your judges' eyes only version of the case studies? Because that's what obviously we ask for. What can you share with everybody here today who might be struggling with this when they come to writing up their case studies?
Yeah, there's no doubt that this is one of the most difficult aspects of making a submission. And in fact, I think there's been a number of years where we've had some clear candidates to kind of put in for the award, but it's kind of we've come up against resistance as to sort of about getting that information out and sort of and getting permission to be able to share that. So I think that trying to identify individuals within the organization who clearly kind of understand the benefit that design can kind of bring to the organization. They sort of first and foremost, I think, is trying to identify somebody, an advocate within that organization that can help you to bring this forward. Because to be perfectly honest, the information that you're going to get is not necessarily going to come from those who have a design background. They might come from other functions that don't necessarily see the kind of the impact that design can have. It's kind of down to us then to disseminate that information and kind of work that into a valuable sort of submission. So I think finding an advocate within that helps you to be able to identify other individuals that will be able to kind of have that starting as early as you possibly can, because it's kind of quite a long process to be able to extract that, because ultimately you will need to digest that, present it back to them, and agree on what information you can include in the non-confidential version of your submission. But actually, where we've tripped up in the past is not everybody's aware that there are these two submissions that you have, a confidential and a non-confidential one. So the confidential one is only seen by the judges.
Yeah.
And sort of so I think in the past there's a belief that sort of this information that's going to be handed over is just going to be out there in the public domain and is going to sort of like, you know, open up some, you know, he's going to identify some strategic direction that the client is going in. So I think that, you know, just trying to get that information, letting them know that there's a number of options, and then trying to anonymize the information, how that information is presented, you know, with percentages rather than actual figures, and sort of like, you know, and graphs rather than sort of like, you know, than hard metrics. I think, you know, they're the areas I think that we would sort of like, I'd suggest that, you know, if I could offer any suggestions, it would be sort of like start early, find an advocate, and sort of like, and try to anonymize it as best you can.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's fantastic. And I can certainly vouch that it's a bit like NI5 or the Kremlin or something in the judging sessions. It's taken extremely seriously. And just final question to you, Jason, then we're going to have answer some of the questions that have come in. But Jason, you know, the impact on a business, we know that your DBA Design Effectiveness Awards, you know, they deliver more than just a trophy on the shelf, don't they? I think it's fair to say, for you as a business, for Contagious. Tell us a little bit more about how entering and winning these awards has helped develop your business, helped deliver new business to your company.
Well, I suppose there's three sides to that. The first one is just the kind of sheer pride that we have in kind of winning this award, and the kind of knowledge of the kind of total usefulness of the award. I mean, that's the whole point of them. We know that it's not just a beauty competition. It doesn't just depend on, you know, the amount of tables you may have bought at a dinner. Not that any other award ever would, but that's kind of really important to us. That kind of, so in terms of our own self-confidence, I think that has been really great for us. In terms of new business, it gives us it gives us a common language to speak to our clients right at the outset. It means we can convince them straight away that we are not just the stylists or prima donnas, that we are interested in what we do and what we do for them. We have pride in our customers, them as our clients, and their customers as well. That's really important to us, because we know that they don't want to they're interested in running a business. It's not just an art gallery that they want to open. So quickly get that across to them, and we will often submit our submissions to them first of all before we even send any credits now, which has been really good. And also the third point is, in the future, and I think Patsy touched on this as well, we now have a framework to work with it. And so with all new projects, we're kind of always thinking about the criteria for the DBA awards, because regardless of whether we win an award or not, we just find that a really good thing for us to base our strategy on in terms of how we approach our project.
Fantastic. That's really great. That's really great news. Right, I'm going to try and find some questions in this chat list, and just bear with me 1 minute whilst I try and read them all and get hold of them. Now, I know there was a question from Simon. I can't actually see it at the moment. So, here we go. Got it. Hello, Simon. Thanks for joining us, Simon Harmer. So question to everybody, really. Getting into the client discussion early, just how do you make that happen? Is it just down to the client relationship and trust? Any thoughts on that from anybody at all? Philip, you've been quiet for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just sort of thinking back on my experience with this. I think, yes, it tends to be down to the client. You know, we can't sort of force our way into sort of conversations that we haven't been invited to. And on new projects, it tends to be that we are you know, sort of lucky enough to be talking to a client at an early enough stage. And part of this is actually, you know, so what we're doing here in terms of like our discussions with the DBA, where we're talking about business effectiveness and so on. I think that, you know, that way of thinking about design gets out there, and the more clients are aware of that, the earlier they get us involved in the conversation. Other than that, you know, so what we tend to do is to basically sort of cultivate relationships with existing clients. So we're always, you know, like everyone has said on this panel, we're always sort of asking them about like what their goals are in the future, and we're sort of talking much more to them about what they're trying to achieve rather than what they need done. And I think that tends to begin to sort of like pull you up the decision chain.
I'm hearing that from all the panelists, actually. I think it's very impressive how you've all managed to reach a more strategic level and get that level of trust. That's been such a strong theme. I'm going to go, unless anyone else has anything to say about that, I'm going to go to Fran's question, which is, it seems to get harder to extrapolate the other influencing factors, and I know this is true as the chair of the judges, some of which, such as social media, could just as easily be attributed to the effectiveness of the design work. Do you have any views about that panel? How do we really establish that the effectiveness has been caused by design?
The way that we've kind of managed it in the past is to try to be able to identify. We've been able to separate out, say, if we would, if the launch, say in the case of Essential Mist, was not necessarily accompanied by any sort of special sort of like promotion, then you could kind of say, you know, if you saw an uplift in that, you could almost extrapolate from that kind of it's the design of the product itself that's actually, you know, that's standing out on shelf and is kind of like, you know, promote. So I think there are ways in which you can kind of identify that, but unfortunately, you know, it's very difficult to kind of divorce one from the other, particularly sort of like in the case of you don't know how some of the global products that we're designing are being supported in other regions. But you know, there is plenty of evidence that maybe some of the anecdotal stuff that kind of like the works up to that kind of gives a suggestion. If it's doing particularly well in market research, for instance, that kind of gives a little bit of an indication that actually that will translate then into sort of like, you know, or it can be corroborated within sales when it launches.
I mean, Katarzyna, I thought it was very interesting in your talk about how it was the show, the kind of physical launch of the work you'd done that had a massive impact on the market. So it was very clear, I guess, to see. Mm-hmm. Were you there at the show?
Me personally, I unfortunately not, but there are 4 designers, so a strong team, and they were helping to build up all the exposition and everything. So we really took care about every detail. But coming back to answering the question, I guess that's a little bit difficult to like put aside, because communication with the market, communication with the user, that's a part of user experience actually. And we are past the storytelling kind of advertisement already. And in our case, you don't buy a camper van like by impulse. It's like too expensive to do that. Right. So you really need to like know what you want and be an experienced user to own a camper van. And for us, actually, it's difficult for me to say how much marketing helped us, probably helped, how much the pandemic helped us, or even the reverse, the course. That's difficult to say. What we can say that it's a huge success. And for us, the moment of the launch was the most important, because that was a novelty. That was the first time everyone could see the product, like experience it. And
great.
So it happened that it was a hit on this show. So this is for us what counts.
Yeah, we've only got a few minutes left. We've got one last question, and so keep your answers fairly brief if you wouldn't mind. But it's a very good question. It's from Alison Salmon. Hello, Alison, and it's about how do you get the data together? How you generate the stats, both at the start, you know, where you started from, and at the end, what's the delta, where you wanted to be. Do you gather the data yourselves? Have you found ways to get this information from your clients? What's the secret? Alison asks, do they think it's more challenging in B2B or B2C? That's another question, but let's just concentrate on the data. How do you actually build the data to enter the competition? Any thoughts on that? Jason, you've been quiet for a while.
Yeah, I think the answer is in the name of your organisation. It's the Design Business Association, and the fact the award comes in 2 parts. You know, and what everybody I think has been unified today on the panel is it really is, if you're to take a non-metricable thing, it's really about a great relationship. It's about having the right sort of relationship with the client, so that they're willing to spend that time with you. They're willing to kind of share things that they thought were going to be kind of secret and trust you. So it's about trust with the client and kind of starting conversation early and just assuring them that it's a really important, convincing them it's an important word for both of us and both the client and ourselves. So, yeah, I think.
Philip, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I'll also pick up on the point that Katarzyna sort of said earlier, which is that this can sort of change the way you approach projects and you work on projects. So, sort of from the very first stage of the briefing, we should be asking, what are we trying to achieve? What are the metrics that you're measuring to show that we are achieving this? And then the design comes from that. So right from the start, we're already beginning to think about what are we looking for and what are we measuring? And then, like Jason says, it is then about sort of building that relationship with the client where they're willing to make the effort to share this information with you. Because I think that's the other thing to say is that, it is a lot of work to pull the measurements together, and it's got to be kind of worthwhile for all parties to do that.
And I think just bearing that in mind right the way throughout the project, actually being aware that sort of like, we might be applying for this award sort of like in the future, it actually reminds us to kind of like jot things down as we're going through the project, and kind of thinking, right, that's going to be really great support and evidence to put into the submission. So actually just constantly kind of keeping that in your mind and thinking about it throughout any new project you're working on.
Yeah, fantastic. We're up on time. I'm so sorry. I found that a fascinating conversation. I hope all of you in the audience have enjoyed getting these incredible insights from these 4 very successful people who have this great heritage of success at the DBA Design Effectiveness Awards. It's a totally unique award. I absolutely love it. I find it my favorite days of the year. And I can just add now this as another favorite day of the year. I want to say a huge thanks to Katarzyna, to Jason, to Di, and to Philip for sharing with us all your thoughts and your experience of going through this process. Encourage everybody to get involved. Go to your clients, go to your agencies, come and enter this amazing competition. I'm looking forward to chairing the next session where we see all the results of your endeavours over the last year or two. And my goodness, they've been particularly challenging ones, and we do appreciate that and factor it in. Thank you again, everybody. Just brilliant. Thank you for all the comments in the chat. It looks like lots of people have enjoyed it. I think you all have inspired people who've come along here. Thanks to the DBA for another amazing event. Well done you. Thanks to the back team for making everything work and making the videos come at the right time. I really appreciate that. And thank you all for joining us. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.